Are we okay to get started? Okay, so I have something to share. I have many things to share, but being that this is 201, I wanted to just quickly open the floor to see what kind of things you're really interested in learning, because if I can integrate them into the presentation, I will. So does anyone have anything they want to share? Yes?
I'm interested in fundraising for events.
Fundraising through events.
For events.
Can you be more specific?
Yes. To activate, so I work in a community garden, and to activate the gardens and the parks in our neighborhood. Not everyone wants to come and volunteer in a garden, but just to bring community out and enjoy the space. I would like to activate it through performing arts and visual arts. It's a neighborhood that doesn't have any venues for those things.
Right, so you want to fundraise so that you can put on
Yes.
events. Got it, okay. Thank you. Anyone else? You want to pass the mic?
Hi, thank you. We are fundraising for a school, green schoolyard, and then also for the adjacent park, and which was a disinvested park for many, many years in Visitation Valley. And so we are fundraising. It's going to be renamed in the name of a woman who was actually attacked there and murdered there. But we want to bring all of the conditions that create, all of the elements that help to create the conditions so that that type of violence doesn't happen anymore there. So
Okay,
it's probably it'll be millions of dollars.
Got it, okay.
A little above my pay grade.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I'll just jump in, and we will save some time for a question and answer. Will you guys sit down? Just loitering in the back. It's very uncomfortable. Now I understand it. Okay, guys, per the description on the session, the things that I want to talk about and why we're calling this Fundraising 201, if you went to Fundraising 101, you learned a lot about the what. How do you build your list? How do you get these names? When do you reach out to people? What's a good calendar schedule for that? Today we're going to talk about when you reach out, what are you going to say? How do you engage people in a way that feels meaningful, authentic, in a way that people will coming back? So I focus on individuals. That said, I'm happy to talk about gifts from corporations or even local businesses, which I think are great ideas. But I will say, I think the real investment is with individuals, and here's why. As humans, we have values. We have lifelong values. It's recycling, or it's restorative justice. It's raising children. Number one, they are. Often when you have them, they exist for your whole life. They might not be number one. They may shift order in your priorities, but they exist. So if you can share your values in an effective way and get people to align with those values, and you don't have to convince them. The people that are going to come to you already have those values, and they say, yes, I agree, I support this cause. Those people, as long as you engage them the right way, which is what we're going to talk about today, they'll be lifelong people with you. They give you $20 a year, but they will do that for 20 years. And so with businesses, with corporations, they can change their values. All that engagement you've made to connect with an employee is gone when they leave. Foundations quickly change their values. People don't. So if you can gather a community of people that agree with what you're doing and believe in your cause, you can have a good, constant, steady group of supporters, which I think is really important, and it's something you can rely on. So people are always asking, well, what about tech? Let's get the tech money. Sure, but it's with individuals that's the best bang for your buck. All right, so before I start, a little bit about me. My name is Sonia Gonzalez. I work at San Francisco Parks Alliance. I run the development and marketing departments. Before that, I had a consulting business where I was helping a lot of different nonprofits. I stepped in for a lot of interim director roles, and it's because I wanted to help places problem solve. I came to California with my husband from New York City, where I worked at organizations like Jazz at Lincoln Center, Brooklyn Botanic Garden, American Federation of the Arts. So I've worked in a lot of different purpose-filled organizations, but the stuff we're going to talk about, these strategies remain the same for all of them. So you can tell me about the things you're raising money for, the stories behind them, as long as we can tell them in clear, efficient, effective, authentic ways and how they can be involved, these strategies will work for all of these. Uh-oh. It's on my, well, there we go. Okay, here we go. All right, how to grow. So stories, because I'm starting with individuals, the way that we communicate, the way we've communicated as Homo sapiens has been through stories. One of the reasons we've been effective as Homo sapiens, other multiple animals, is because we were able to pass down stories and histories and live off each other's learnings. We're not all out there trying to invent and understand chemistry. We are passing down those stories and we are building upon it. We are an animal that thrives on stories, the things we remember are stories. So when you're thinking about, when we're talking about individuals, I want you to be thinking about what your story is. What's the story of your group? I have some sheets here. I don't know if we'll have time to do the brainstorm today. Would you take one and pass? But this is I'm going to go through this, and I want you to think about it. So stories are important. You could come in and tell someone what, but you really need to tell the whole story, and it's much more than the what. So what makes a good story? Any great answers? One story, and I'm not talking about a nonprofit story, a story in a book. What makes a good story? Great opening. Relatability. What's that? Conflict. Having a problem and then having the answer. So all those are right. You're communicating effectively, you're connecting with the audience, relatability, and it's memorable, a good start, right? So all those things you said, I think, relate into this. And when we think about all of us, you can put yourself in your donor prospects position. There's a lot of people asking for money, and there's a lot of things you can give money to. So how are you going to set yourself apart, right? The main way is to be authentic, and we're going to talk about exactly how you'll be able to do that. So the golden circle, has anyone seen this or have heard about this? Okay, great. So the golden circle is this idea that when you're telling a story or you're telling anyone anything or you're trying to sell something, you have a why, how, and a what. Most people start with the what, but you should start with the why. And this is, again, talking about how we're connecting with people and how to reach them from value to value. Right? So why is not about getting money. It's the result. It's the purpose, the cause, or belief. It's the very reason your organization exists. On your sheet of paper there, I have a place for you to write your why. You can do it now, or you can think about it. You can grab me later. We can talk about it too. How? Some organizations know how they do it. That's what makes them special and set them apart. And what? Every organization knows what they do. What we do, we throw events. What we do, we clean up a space. But those aren't your hows and those aren't your whys. So I have an example for you here, one that I've taken from corporate America and one that I've built myself that might be a little more accessible. So Imperfect Produce. Does anyone know of Imperfect Produce? They sell ugly fruit, right? You could sell it like that. That would be awful. But look what they've done. We believe that food is food no matter what it looks like. We don't even know that this is an ugly fruit selling company, right? This is something bigger. And you can read that first line and say, yes, I agree, right? I align with this value, right? So this bigger picture, we don't even know what they do. We believe that everyone deserves access to healthy food regardless of income. If yes, they still have you, right? And we believe that changing the way we eat and think about food, we can make the world a better place. Wow, they are thinking really big for being a box of ugly food, right? So when I think about Friends of Silver Terrace as an example I use of an alleyway in my neighborhood, I might start with, we believe that San Francisco has enough generosity to make sure all public spaces are safe, welcoming, regardless of their neighborhood. If people are going, yeah, I do it, I believe that too, I'm going to keep going. Why? It's also the what is the problem, the conflict you were talking about. Imperfect Produce might say, food waste is a significant problem in Western countries, especially in the United States. That's their problem. They're going to show you how they're going to fix it too. Because they want you to buy that produce, not because you need more ugly fruit in your life. You're going to buy the produce because you believe this, because you want to help solve this problem. So another problem for a local community group might be the Silver Terrace alleyway is mired with dumping, weeds, and lack safe lighting. Here's the how. This part is often the easiest, I think. Imperfect Produce fights food waste by finding a home for ugly produce. We source it directly from farms and deliver it to customers' doors for 30% less than the grocery store prices. Friends of Silver Terrace, by providing ongoing maintenance and adding lights, new plants, and paint, the Silver Terrace alleyway will be safer for the vast community that utilizes the space. So you can see those were 3 very different messages. And what you'll find on the sheet you have is that all that language is really important when you're building your communication and what you might send to someone. I think I got a little ahead of myself. Here's the what. What? Imperfect Produce. Our subscription box is affordable, customizable, health, and delicious. And notice their what isn't even, we give you a box of ugly fruit. Even the way they describe it there is much, much more beautiful than a box of ugly fruit. Silver Terrace. Friends of Silver Terrace meets monthly to maintain the alleyway and raises funds for materials to keep it beautiful and welcoming. So this is not in the golden circle, but I think this is really important for fundraising. How you can be involved. What is your role, or what is in it for me, I might say. Here, I can move over here too. So what I've highlighted here, I'm not going to read this to you, but you can see I've highlighted the yous. You see the you and the your. When people read messages, including you and letters you get, you often read the yous. You look for the yous because it's how it relates to you. So think about that when you're writing something about what's in it for them and how this will affect them. Will it make their neighborhood better? Will it make their walking experience better? Will it give them a place to engage with their neighbors? You'll meet neighbors. You'll be celebrating history here. We'll make sure together something doesn't happen like this again. But the you is really important. And I often will read something and go back through and change things to add the you in there. So here's what I might say for Friends of Silver Terrace. When you support this project, you are helping build a stronger community. You will be helping neighbors. This is important. When people give, they want to know that they're giving to something that's changing. They want to feel like they're helping making change. And if they don't feel that, they'll go to another organization that does make them feel that way. So on the worksheet, that's where I put it all together. Is the backside have red text to it, or is it black and white? Perfect. So what you see on the back is me basically writing a letter that I might send to someone in the year end. What I put in red are the pieces that I've added. But everything else is the why, what, and how that I just showed you above, and the you, right? So when you do that worksheet on the front, this is how you can put it together. And the quote at the top, we'll talk about that too. I think that's a really nice intro, an accessible, memorable way, like we talked about, to get people to read the rest of the letter. I put it up here too for you guys. So that's the circle that I wanted to show you. And the other things I want to talk about are your stories, how we can have better stories. So here's the language I want you to use. Here's some other important points as you think about writing your stories. The data. So you're doing a year of taking care of a space. Do you remember how many times you got together to work on that space? Do you remember how many people attended each time? If you had a community meeting, how many people spoke up? You might not think in the moment to be tracking that stuff, but man, that stuff is important. It's important so that you can communicate your impact, like we were talking about, but you can't do it and you can't show growth. You can't show impact quantitatively if you're not tracking those things. So often before I have some sort of event where I'm bringing people together, I'll ask someone else, can you make sure you tally everyone that comes through? Like, put it on someone else if you're the one engaging everyone and in greeting everyone. But get someone to do these things. Attendee numbers, the projects you've completed, how many plantings you've done, etc. Stories and quotes from your volunteers and from the people who use the space. So anytime you have a conversation with someone where they say something that might be quotable, like, oh, I walked by that community garden the other day. It was so beautiful. Thank you so much. Hey, thanks so much. I'm so glad people are enjoying it. That's why we do this work. Could I get your name and use your quote, use something you say in one of our documents in the future? Some will say yes, some will say no, but this is important. I mean, the letter I just sent you, the quotes are a way to show off what you're doing without you being the one of showing it off, right? So incredibly important. You can ask for them. Frankly, you can even draft things and send it to people that you know have had that experience and be like, this is what I got from what you told me. Can I use this? And just have them approve it. Oh, I'm not done with this page. Good photos, before and after photos speak worlds. We often don't think about those things again. The person that you have tallying, make them take the before picture as well. Those are meaningful, they're impactful. The group shots, celebrating the work you've done, it's important. And it may seem weird or strange to do those in the moment, getting together the strangers that don't know each other, but it's good. And those are great pictures you can put in your pieces too. So appeal writings have a goal, and that means what are you looking for from them? What are you asking for? Are you asking for money to throw events? Are you asking for gardening supplies? Before you write your letter, what is it we need? We just need money, but what do we need money for? That's what you need to talk about. So you need to know what that is. You need to know your audience. Is it your neighbors? Is it your neighbors' neighbors? Is it other philanthropic people? How can you write a letter that is written for them, right? Short paragraphs. This is something that probably seems odd to do it correctly, but it works. If you still get direct mail in the mail, which is a dying breed, you see those are crazy short paragraphs. They're written like in that typewriter font, and there's crazy amounts of space. That's all intentional because it's easier to read, and even if people skim it, they will skim more material. So small paragraphs. Your call to action could be one sentence. You'll see what I've done. Why are there 5, 6 paragraphs, whatever I've done in the back, all very intentional. The call to action early on, I like to put what we're looking for, what we're asking you for, very close to the top. You can repeat it again, and you could repeat it in the PS, but you don't want people to have to find it. Get it close to the top. You can put it in bold. It can be its own paragraph, but we're looking for a community to help to support this important project. Then your why. You guys are so quiet. I know I didn't ask anyone to speak up, but you're so quiet. Okay, tips for writing. We're continuing here. Bold and postscript. Bold is really important. It feels weird. It feels kind of markety, but it works, and people expect it. Postscript, a PS. Did I put a PS on that letter I wrote? I hope I did. Okay, great. So PS, I often do a PS, is basically a summary of the whole letter. Like, hey, we're doing this thing. This is how it will help the world. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Give this amount. Because sometimes people just read the PS. And that seems weird. But again, most people are not reading our things. They're not. They're scanning it. Even with the emails we send, people are not, if you sent the same email twice, 99% of people wouldn't realize it. You change the subject line, perfect. Change the first line, perfect. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and write a whole nother email with the same thing and spend so much time on that. You don't have to do it. People aren't reading them. Consider reader's device. We're reading on our phones now, right? So write it, put it in an email, look at it on your phone. Does that just look crazy long? Would you read it? Would your friend read it? Would your typical audience member read it? If not, shorten it. Try it again. Timing. Fridays are not great days to send emails or letters out. Tuesdays and Wednesdays are ideal. We often plan on sending things out at 6 a.m. because unfortunately, if you're like me, sometimes you'll lay in bed and look at work emails, right, as first thing in the morning. But we want it to be in the top of that list. So Tuesdays, Wednesdays, if you're thinking about emails, or Thursdays. I also say timing because if you have a certain event coming up or something that's happening, it's nice to say, can you give us this before this deadline? Giving them a sense of urgency is a great idea as well. Ask others to review. Again, we get so in the weeds of the things we're writing, what's important to us. But give a letter to someone else and say, what am I trying to get from this? Why should you care? Do you care? What do you care about? Like, does this make sense? Really important. People that don't know anything about the project, you want them to be able to understand it too. And a scan test, this is that idea, no one's reading. If you scan it, sometimes I look through my letters and if I read only the things in bold, would it still make sense? Yes, okay, great. This is really important. I learned this at a conference, and I really like this idea. I put an asterisk by volunteer because I don't think this is necessary. So for a moment, let's just take that out. A cycle of a donor, this idea that, again, let's say you meet someone at an event, you share this idea you have or about this project, and they're like, yeah, I want to be a part of this, I want to support it. Let me know what I can do, right? Okay, so the cycle of getting an engaged donor, let's say you share the impact. Here's what we want to do. Here's what we're going to do. Okay, great. They either suggest or you ask. Let's say we'll ask because suggesting, then you don't really have a problem if people are coming up and offering you money. So you're putting out an email ask, you're sending a letter, you're saying, can you give me $50 so that we can buy trash bags for this community project? Great. They say yes, they give you money. Thank them. At a certain level, the thanking is your first step to your next gift. And when you're talking about large groups of donors, people talk about first-time gifts, big deal. It's hard to get people to give a first gift. But then you look at their second gift too, because that's crazy important. Because once you get a second gift, these people have aligned with their values, and the likelihood of giving a third gift and going on forever is much higher. You have a lot of people who give first-time gifts and then they go away. They did it because their friend asked them, they felt impulsive. Maybe they don't really, really value this, but they did it. It's that second-time gift. So the people that you need to focus on are both the first-timers, because that's a lot of work, but once you've gotten them, my God, you focus on them so that you can get a second gift. So you thank them. All that to say you thank them. The thanks should be personal. I'll say at Parks Alliance, you have to treat people differently if you have, 3,000 donors, right? So at a certain level, at $500, they often get a handwritten note from me. Sometimes I'll just do it by email if I know them well. I throw my card in there, thank you so much. I invite them out for coffee. I'd love to share more about the project. I'd love to hear more about what you think about this project, right? There's the you. People want to come out and tell you their stories and tell you what they think. Yes, they want to do that. People want to do that. At the same time, you can slide in what's important as well, right? So at what level do you decide this person should get maybe extra special treatment? If you're starting out, I'd say everyone does. Any donor at $50, especially in San Francisco, but really any donor that gives $50 can likely give you $250. And if someone gives you $500, they could likely give you $1,000 if they can just drop that, right? But the difference between those is the thanks experience they have. Did they get a lot of gratitude? Did they see the impact of your work? So we've thanked them either with a phone call, an email, a handwritten note, or multiple of those. I will sometimes call and leave a voicemail and follow up with an email like, hey, I just sent you a voicemail, but I just wanted to let you know how grateful I am for the gift you just gave. I'd love to share more about what we're doing and hear about what resonates with you about this work. Please let me know if that's of interest. So it doesn't hurt. There's no overthinking people. It's never existed. So you got a gift, you've thanked them. Now before you ask them for another gift, we're still taking out volunteer here, you need to share the impact of the work. Often people go from ask to thank. You ask them, you thank them. Oh, it's time to ask them again, you ask them again. Great. But this step is really important. Sharing the impact of what their gift did. And it doesn't have to be an individualized, custom, another touch with the person, another connection or a reach out. It can be a bigger, the data we talked about. We did this many projects. We met this many times. We pulled out this many species of plants. We planted these. You'll send that to your donors and say, thank you, your gift helped made this possible, X, Y, Z. And I would say there's another handwritten note on that. So that can be an email with a picture, that could be a postcard that you write on, but you need to connect their gift to that work. After that, you can ask again. And I put volunteer in here because that always should be an option for people. You should always be engaging them and asking them to volunteer. Some of your volunteers will, and some people can't volunteer because of time or other reasons, but they still want to support it, so we want to give them that opportunity too. Many ways, many touches. So I often talk about, and I've heard that, it takes 7 touches before someone becomes a donor. There's a lot of things that you can do that's kind of pre-work to getting someone to engage. Someone may need a certain amount of touches before they will make the step over to believing in what you do to actually making a gift to you, right? You don't know how many it takes. It's different for different people, but you need to know, you need to keep engaging them. Say engaging, I'm calling touches, I'm calling that different connection points. That seems much more appropriate. So in person, this is when you're volunteering, or maybe you're pulling everyone together to have coffee to talk about the project. in a mailing. And I'd say that touch, really adding that personal note, the handwritten something is an important part of making that an authentic touch. An email, it should not look custom if we're going to consider this a real touch. Always start with thanks and handwritten thank you notes. Always start with thanks is a little out of place here. Let's ignore that one. Handwritten thank you notes, we talked about that too. So these are important. And they are a lot, but these are all the steps to that second gift or that first gift. And even if people have volunteered and not given this, always start with thanks, I'll go with now, just always. They could have done nothing for your project. They could have showed up 2 hours late and left early. Thank you so much for being a part. Thank you so much for helping us out. We really benefited from your support. Now, you don't need to go out of your way and be inauthentic, but people are giving what they can. We all are crazy busy and don't have a lot of time, so if you see people, acknowledge it. So this is something that, I don't know, I never see this in things, and it feels very robotic, like it takes away the true authenticity of relationships. But when you are, when you are fortunate enough to have a growing community of givers, and you still want to have authentic relationships with them, you might often have to write down what your conversation was and track it and say, in a Google sheet, we might have a person's name, their last gift amount, the date, what it was for, last conversation, next steps. Next steps is impact report, right? Because we said that step has to go in there. Next conversation is ready for second ask. Last conversation was they actually were really mad because the volunteer event was canceled and they didn't know about it. Follow up with a coffee, right? So that you don't have to think about these things by person, you have a customized strategy. And this is when your list gets really big, when it's hard to remember these things. I think hopefully these things will come more natural with a smaller list. But if someone had a bad experience and came and a volunteer event was canceled, next time they got an email from you saying, hey, I'm so sorry that happened. Can I take you out for coffee? I'd love to hear more about what you think about this project and why you're involved. That's just, it's going to fade away. They're going to come back. But if you don't tag that, you may never remember that. How would you know that that's the next step to follow up if you're dealing with 25 people or more? Now, this kind of tracking and engagement that I'm talking about, when you grow your base, we're really wanting to prioritize the people who tend to give more. That's naturally the strategies that you see in nonprofits doing that. They don't do it for their thousands of people that give $50. They give it for their 50 people that give $1,000. So I would not suggest you do this for hundreds of people on your list. It's the people that you really want to engage for one reason or another that you would track something like this. How am I doing on time? Oh, there's a clock right there. How valuable. Okay, what's that? Okay, I think I'm good. So flip the perspective. This is something I talk about with my team a lot. When someone has an experience with you, whatever you're doing, flip that experience and sit back and say, okay, if I came to this or I wanted to be a part of this, what would it look like? What would a real welcoming experience look like? Well, I would show up. They would have started on, I'm going to give my own, because this is not true for you. I show up, they've started on time, they have materials ready for me, maybe they have a snack. Someone immediately greets me, introduces me to other people. We end on the time they said they were going to end on. We take a group picture. I feel like a little bit of a community of which they text to me later, and I get a follow-up thank you email. Wow. So I've just laid out the experience. Now you flip it and say, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that happens, right? What do I want my experience to look like? And then how do we flip that and do the administration for that? So, capital projects. This was something that our team member said was important to ask about too. The strategy for capital projects, frankly, is quite the same for anything else I'm talking about. You're engaging people the same way. You're sharing the impact. You're telling them how they can be involved. Nothing changes. The only difference is with a capital project, the concern is that people say when they do a capital project, they don't want to take away from their regular giving. What you're really asking for is an extra special gift. And you often ask for a one-time special gift towards something. And there's a way to communicate it's a one-time special gift in addition to your generous annual gift of $50. So you highlight this one-time ask because you don't want everyone's one-time ask and then all of a sudden you don't have any of the other money that you counted on that they gave you last year, right? So highlighting that difference is incredibly important. How close am I to the end here? I think I'm really close. Great. So acquisition and renewals, I see these as the two when we talk about engaging, growing your base and engaging your base and keeping your base for long term. The acquisition, that's grabbing the new people. That's something you should always be thinking about, looking at and evaluating. How many people in our community, how many people are coming to these groups? How many gifts did we give in this year? How many donors do we have in this year? Because how many gifts you have in a year is going to be different from how many donors you have in a year. I care more about donors than about gifts. One donor can give you 10 gifts in a year. That's great, but it's still you're engaging one person. That's important that you're always thinking about it. That takes work. That's those many, many touches, right? So that's slow. It's slow, but if you're doing it right, it will be steady. And then the renewals, okay, you got them, so don't blow it. Keep them. And so what that means is that gratitude. It means keeping in touch, sharing the impact, and then asking again. Don't be afraid to ask. People will ignore it if they don't want to do it. And sometimes people ignore it 3 times again. So these are the 2 key things. It's not like brain science. These are the 2 things you think about and you evaluate as you're looking at your community of supporters. So I'm going to stop there. And I think I'm going to stop there. So that was a lot, and you guys were exceptionally quiet. So either you're shocked or you were saving questions. Does anyone have any questions?
I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
Towards the end there, you're talking about things which are sort of the realm of people tracking, which is the realm of like a CRM or whatever you call it, right? So I think you guys have access to Salesforce. Oh, thank you. So towards the end, you're talking about tracking donors, basically. And I know the Parks Alliance, I think, is Salesforce internally. I use some spreadsheet I hacked together, which looks similar to what you have there. I'm just curious if you have any recommendations for us as park partners, or if anyone else in the room has a successful thing they've used to track it. Because right now I'm trying to track every donation because we give some trivial swag to everyone who gives us more than like $20, and I have to remember, did I even ask them? What color did they want? Did I give it to them? I'm not going to give them 3 times in a year, plus the larger donors, obviously.
So what's interesting is that we do have Salesforce, but for our major donor tracking like this, I feel like I do it in a Google sheet. And that's not because Salesforce doesn't work, but for us, the really accessible conversations happen with a Google sheet. The CRMs, until you get to a certain level, they are not going to be cost effective for you, right? So there's a lot that can be done with Google Sheets. But if anyone has another idea, I'd love to hear it.
I have a question. So how do you get the big tech? Oh, I'll use this one. Is it on? Hello? Okay.
Whoa.
That's now you can hear me. How do you get the big tech companies involved in like nonprofits and community groups? Because I'm sure they get hit up all the time with requests and asks for donations. Like what sets the small community groups and nonprofits apart to get a big company's attention?
Sure. So it starts with, does the big company first have a philanthropic arm? Right? So, for example, Parks Alliance, we work on major campaigns where we're looking for $1 million gifts. We finally got through to Facebook, and they don't do that. So if they don't do it, I'm not going to convince them otherwise. Right? So you need to know, first of all, do these companies do it? Cole Hardware is someone who gives to a lot of smaller groups and worth checking out. And the way you can find that out, look at some of your peers, look at their websites, look at their invitations, what logos are on there. You need to build to start your research of a database of people that are, or companies that are real prospects, right? For example, I don't think I've seen Facebook's logo as like a philanthropic supporter of anything, right? Which we probably should have looked at first. So that's the first step. Do they do this? The second one is finding the right person. So that often is work in itself, connecting to someone to connect to someone to get to the right person. But that takes out so many steps if you can find that person. And there's different titles. What are some of the titles? This is Steve, my colleague, who works on all these things with me. What are some of the titles, like government policy? Like, what kind of titles do we look for?
Community relations, government affairs, and sometimes they have a clear philanthropic person. And sometimes it's just marketing staff, honestly. It's just, their budgets could come from their marketing dollars. So, yeah, it's not always super clear.
It's not. It's and the marketing dollar. So you go in, you find this person. If you find someone that works at one of these places, which we run into all the time. Oh, where do you work? Right? Met someone that worked at Lyft. I said, oh, I'd love to get in touch with your grant department. And she said, oh, we don't have one, right? And I think she was right, but I don't think we gave up on them yet. So all that to say, connecting through connections, people are less likely to ignore you, right? So you got to find the right person. You got to connect and find the right person. And then you have to have something that they already do. They're not going to launch a new program, likely, because of your wonderful and very valuable project. But if they have something, they'll be willing to look at it, certainly. And then for those marketing budget that Steve's talking about, sometimes, for example, Kaiser has a philanthropic, and then it also has a marketing department. What's in it for them? Again, how many people are they getting exposed to, right? Is it 15 people? That might not interest them as much, but does it deeply affect the health of that community? Kaiser's really into health. You have to make sure you're making that case. When we talk to big donors, tech companies and such, we ask, what's your values? To see from the very beginning, we talk to Google, what's your value? Homelessness. Okay, so either we need to make the case for parks as it relates to homelessness, or we need to walk away and not waste anyone's time. But they'll be really honest with you about those things because they don't want to waste your time either. Hope that's helpful. Other questions?
Can I add one thing on that? Having a volunteer opportunity for their employees for these big tech companies is also a really important part, or a way to get the attention. Because if they have something for their employees and they feel like their company's engaged in your mission in a deeper way, then sometimes it can unlock more dollars. And
then you have their employees, which are individuals, right? That there's such an opportunity to continue to connect with them if you're getting their email, which you learned in 101 with Steve.
I just want to add something to that. I don't know if they're still doing this, but I think Facebook was and Google was, if you actually do have volunteers, they'll pay you not actually that much money per hour that the volunteers show up. But I think getting one or two individual donors from that is much more valuable. On the other hand, I had some small startup ask about our volunteer events where we provide pizza afterwards. They wanted to make really sure that I was going to give their employees pizza. I was like, that's the wrong direction.
Any other questions? Anything resonate that I shared that you want to share with each other? I mean, the context you're talking about, this is a group that your peers here, so take advantage of working on projects. What has worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Anyone want to share anything based off what we learned today? All right, then I'm going to take advantage of these last 10 minutes and have you do your whys, your what's your hows from the worksheet. And then maybe someone will be brave enough to share